What's up guys, Vress here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Crowfall, the upcoming MMORPG from ArtCraft Entertainment. As this is an overview video, I'll try and stick to the main features and keep it brief rather than overwhelming you with every single detail. However, I'll be putting more detailed videos out for particular features, so make sure to subscribe to my channel for that content. So with introductions over with, let's dive right in. First up, a little bit of background. Crowfall is a game being developed by ArtCraft Entertainment. The team at ArtCraft have a solid MMO background and have worked on projects such as Ultima Online and the Old Republic. The idea behind Crowfall is to create something totally new in the MMO space, which, let's be honest, we've all been waiting for at least the last 10 years. The developers want to mix an MMORPG with a strategy game, with what they've described as a Game of Thrones style political system. As they haven't been able to find a term to describe this type of game, they've coined a new one. They refer to Crowfall as a throne war simulator, which is essentially an MMO but with the ability to actually win or lose, just like you would in a strategy game. They promise us a true Game of Thrones experience. Either you win or you die. This win-lose scenario is enabled by the campaign feature of the game, which we'll be taking a look at in this video. This concept is something that I think has the potential to be amazing if they manage to pull it off. Whilst we're still on background, it's also worth mentioning that Crowfall is being funded by a mix of crowdfunding and traditional investment. At the time of publishing this video, they've raised just over $12.5 million in total funding. So let's take a look at the world itself. Visually, the game looks pretty amazing, especially considering it's still in development. The environments we've seen so far look stunning, and it really feels like a world I could become immersed in. Crowfall implements a really cool cartoony style, which I often think is a good call for MMORPGs. One of the reasons that World of Warcraft has had such a long shelf life is the fact that they didn't try to go too realistic with the graphics. If they'd gone for total realism, the game would be looking pretty dated at this point, so I think ArtCraft have made a good call here. None of us want an MMO that's only going to feel current for 2 to 3 years. With the game looking this good already, I'm expecting great things at launch. Something that immediately stands out about Crowfall is that there's no traditional leveling system in place. You essentially start at endgame. However, endgame is actually quite difficult to define in Crowfall, as the game is very sandbox in nature, which kind of means you get to decide what you want your endgame to be, and we're going to cover a lot of the options in this video. The game features a rich set of race and class choices. I'm not going to dive into each of them as this video would then start to drag on forever. However, I will be putting a video out fairly soon that will take a deeper look at this. The key thing to note is that even though you won't be leveling in Crowfall in the traditional sense, there's still going to be an in-depth skill system that will allow you to customize your class. Skills won't only provide an increase to your base stats, but they'll also enable you to craft new items, use specific gear types, and even grant you new abilities. You may be glad to know that you don't have to grind monsters to increase these skills. They'll actually advance passively over time, even when you're not logged into the game. This makes it a lot easier for casual players to stay competitive. And whilst this isn't the kind of skill system that I'd usually favour in an MMO, I think it actually makes a lot of sense for Crowfall. Mostly due to its focus on creating a player-driven world. It would soon become pretty tedious if a small percentage of players got so far ahead that they were the only ones who were able to drive it. The game features campaigns that span several months, in which factions will fight for control of dynamically created worlds. These worlds will slowly decay and be destroyed over time. Players will have the ability to build up the world in any way they choose. For example, a group of players could build a castle around a point of strategic importance, such as a precious resource, and then defend it from those who wish to take it from them. The destruction of a world will signal the beginning of a fresh campaign. This ensures that the world doesn't become stagnant and that one faction doesn't get to dominate forever. There will be of course some persistent areas, and these are called Eternal Kingdoms. This is where you'll be able to do stuff like store items and own some more permanent player housing. Eternal Kingdoms are a pretty important feature as they add some stability to the game. Otherwise, it would become too much of a strategy game and lose its MMORPG feel. The team at ArtCraft are trying to accomplish the extremely difficult task of creating a persistent world with dynamic rules. So far, I'm really encouraged by the systems that they're coming up with to achieve this. Honestly, if they manage to come good on what they're promising here, this could be a revolutionary game for the genre. For those of you who were put off by the original combat system in Crowfall, it's been totally overhauled and is now looking really good. It reminds me a little of the Elder Scrolls Online combat system, with some elements from games like WildStar and Terra added into the mix. ArtCraft are trying to avoid creating an action combat system that's too dependent on twitch reaction, but they also don't want the combat to become too boring and slow either. What they have so far actually feels like a really nice balance between action combat and the slower, more tactical combat of the traditional MMO. Combat features the ability to dodge and block, as well as elements such as combos, sprints and double jumps. However, it's set at a pace where you can actually identify your opponent's attacks and respond accordingly, rather than just hacking and slashing. In my opinion, this is a very positive step in the right direction. It's notoriously difficult to find the right balance for a combat system in an MMO. I'm hopeful that Crowfall is going to achieve that balance. I guess time will tell. PvE really isn't a focus in Crowfall, so I won't dwell on it for long, as it would be pretty unfair to judge this game on a feature that it isn't claiming to have as a primary focus. However, I am personally a little gutted that Crowfall isn't going to feature any instance PvE or dungeons, mostly because I think the combat system they've implemented would actually be a lot of fun in an endgame PvE context, though I totally understand why they've chosen not to do so. In reality, instance PvE endgame is actually at odds with what they're trying to achieve with Crowfall. ArtCraft claim that their intention with monsters is really just to increase the general level of threat in the game. Killing monsters will allow you to complete certain objectives. For example, you may need to kill a monster to clear an area you want to build on, or to gather a certain resource. One thing that's kind of cool is that monsters will actually get stronger as the campaign progresses, further adding to the sense of danger in the open world. The reality is, if you're not a PvP fan and you're looking for an endgame that features instance PvE, such as dungeons and raids, then Crowfall probably isn't for you. As the game is so focused on PvP, this entire video has really been a discussion of the game's PvP in many ways. PvP is the key influencer over the player-driven world that ArtCraft Studios are trying to create. Because of the way that the campaign system is structured, factions will naturally form, with different players having different ideas as to how they want a particular part of the world to develop. Large-scale battles will be commonplace, and you can expect to see some seriously big castle sieges taking place. As a campaign moves into its later stages, the battle for survival will become more and more desperate, and shelter and resources will become more important than ever. So we can expect to see fierce PvP combat, driven by a desperation to survive the campaign and come out on top. Also, due to the game's voxel system, it looks like much of the environment is going to be destructible. This has obvious PvP implications in terms of castle sieges. You'll have the ability to smash down walls and even tunnel underneath them to assault an enemy castle. This should make for some really exciting PvP experiences. The developers really want you to have an incentive to craft in Crowfall. So rather than the best items only being available from killing monsters, they'll actually be attainable through the crafting system. I think this is a really nice touch, as in most MMOs, crafting usually becomes fairly meaningless once players start finding more powerful items in dungeons and raids. Then you're just left wondering why you even bothered putting time into leveling your professions in the first place. Crafting in Crowfall doesn't only involve the creation of weapons and armour either. Crafting is going to be essential in building cities and castles, as well as creating the mighty war machines required to lay siege to them. The crafting system is intended to be central to the player-driven economy, with the best items only being attainable if you're willing to work and trade with other players. There are obviously plenty of other cool features that we haven't touched on here, as this video is intended as an overview and I don't want it to drag on. As I mentioned at the start, I'll be putting out more videos that will take a deeper dive into particular features, so be sure to subscribe to my channel for that content. It's also worth checking out the game's website to find more information. So there you have it, my brief overview of Crowfall. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments down below. Also, if you liked the video, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.